What's going on, guys? Matt here. Today we are looking at a really interesting knife. Not something I would usually review, but I got it for a great price and I figured we could kind of check it out. We're looking at the Cold Steel Ranch Boss 2. I'm just going to call it the Ranch Boss as we kind of talk about it. So as you can see, this is a very classically designed knife, very similar to, yeah, you guessed it, you know this comparison's coming, the Buck 110. You can see the similar design stylings, and I think that's what Cold Steel is going in this knife, is to have a classic kind of traditional style pocket knife. Something that your grandpa, your dad might have had. But let's go into the specs before we get into what I like, what I dislike, and something unique. And there may be a couple of what I don't mind in there. So this is a 5.2 ounce blade. I believe that's just the knife itself and not the leather sheath, which we will talk about later. So relatively heavy knife. Blade thickness, you're looking at 3.5 millimeters, which is pretty standard for a Cold Steel knife. That's just kind of a standard thickness. 4-inch blade length. This is a large kind of old school style pocket knife. This is an SK5 steel. You can kind of see that. Yeah, so this is an SK5 steel. The handle length is 5 1/4, and this is a faux sawed bone, is what they call it. It's a faux bone. We'll talk about that in a little while. Overall length is 9 1/4 inches, and of course it comes with this leather pouch sheath. So let's get into what I like. First of all, while I have it in my hand, guys, this leather sheath is awesome. I'm going to set the knife down here. This just has a great texture to it. It's nice and soft, but you can see that the thickness, it's a relatively thick material, even thicker than that the Buck 110 sheath. But it has more pliability to it, so it kind of feels like what I believe the Buck 110 sheath will feel like, in a few years down the road. So I think that this is a very, very nice sheath, very well designed. It's just got the classic belt loop, nice stitching. I think this is a fantastic sheath, and honestly, I prefer it over the Buck 110 sheath, which I also like as a sheath just in general. So fantastic sheath. That is definitely one of the solids. What else do I like about this knife? Well, in comparison to the Buck 110, and we're going to be doing a lot of these comparisons as we go, this blade style, I like that it's full flat ground. I think that this nice grinding, full flat grind on a classic blade, this is going to perform those tasks, the hunting tasks, the slicing tasks, the food prep tasks, just a little bit better than that clip point. Is it going to be a lot better? Not a ton better. They're both... This is ground very, very high, so it's not going to be as much of an issue or a difference. But I really, really like this blade design, and I think I like it just a tad bit more than I like the 119 blade design. Really classic clip style blade, but it's got that full flat grind, so it just slices beautifully. What else do I like? Well, I like the handle on this, guys. I think this is a very comfortable handle. Cold Steel's just been killing it with their handles, the knives I reviewed lately. This indexes nicely with my hands. Sometimes when you have that kind of groove right there, it doesn't index perfectly. Me personally, this indexes very nicely. You can get up a little bit closer on it. You can scoot back a little bit. This is a large knife, and so the handle is large, so that gives you a good bit of room to work. Another thing I really like about this in comparison to the 110, again, yes, that's right, you are able to tighten or loosen that pivot. This is pinned. If this loosens, it's never going to become tight again, right? There's no way to adjust the pivot on this, whereas this has a torque spit that you can tighten it. You can break this knife down, right? And that's one of the pluses over the 110. Like, I can take these scales off, I can take this apart, and I can service this knife. And I always prefer a knife that I can service myself and do adjustments on it to clean it out, especially if this is used with game or with food. Stuff gets in that pivot and you might want to clean it out. So I think that this Ranch Boss has a leg up over the 110 in that way. So what else do I like? I like these stainless bolsters. I think these are nice. Are they as nice as the brass? I don't know. That brass stains really easily, but that kind of gives it a classic look, right? It gives that staining. So I like that as well. Another thing I really like is they left this little brass inlay. Yeah, you can see that's brass. There's a lot of reflections because of my lighting in here. They left it kind of open so that you can put an etching on there, so that you can get it engraved with your name or the name of someone you want to give this to. So I think that's really, really fun. that they left that there. Another thing I want to mention is the price, which usually I mention in specs. I forgot that. It's around 35 bucks. The price for kind of the fit and finish isn't perfect, but the price for the fit and finish is pretty solid. And so I always like that. You know, there's not really any sharp corners. Everything's very smooth, and I enjoy that. So that's what I like about this knife. Now let's talk about, I have a couple of things I don't mind, right? Let's talk about the steel. SK5 is not a bad steel. SK5, for those of you who don't know, it is a carbon steel. It's a mid to high carbon. I guess you could classify it as carbon. Generally, people think of it as the Japanese, I think it's Japanese in origin, Japanese version of 1080. 1080 is a perfectly fine steel, not going to be much different than 1095. What I like to call those kind of steels, they're working steels, right? It's not going to be stainless, not at all. It's going to rust a lot, and it's not going to hold the edge the longest, but it's going to hold an edge long enough for your basic tasks. So I think it's fine. It's perfectly fine. It's kind of like 420 HC, if done well enough. It's one of those steels that I'm fine with. I'm okay with it. So that's something that I don't mind. Another thing I don't mind is these faux bone handles. Generally, I hate faux bone. You know, what's the company that does a lot of it? Schrade. Schrade does a lot of faux bone, and it looks horrible. The reason I don't mind it, and it's not something I dislike, is because they didn't go over the top in trying to make this look like real bone, right? It's very much just got this kind of textured material right here, and then it's got these white accents on the side, and you know, if you look at it, it just looks like a regular handle material, and it actually could be mistaken for bone, but it doesn't look as cheesy as some of those Schrades or some of those other knives that, you know, they're really trying hard to make it look like a real bone handle, and it just, you can always tell. It just does not look real. So those are the two things that I don't mind. Okay, what don't I like? The setup of this knife is strange, and let me explain something real quick. You guys know I added this thumb stud mod on my Buck 110, and that's very easy to open. It's not going to be as smooth as some, you know, of the ball bearing pivots, but it opens plenty smooth and it closes plenty smooth. I've tried to put a thumb stud on this knife, and the way this indexes, even if you put it up here, it's nearly impossible to open this one-handed. It's just the detent is too strong, and pushing up like this, it's just you don't have enough strength to really pull this thing out and open. I'm not sure that I love, sorry about that, my phone's going off. I'm not sure that I love the way that this is set up. So this really strong detent and this being a liner lock, you know, a lot of times when you close a liner lock, you're able to just close it like this. But because this also has these detents, kind of like a slip joint knife, you have, I guess, a double kind of locking mechanism, but it just makes it kind of awkward to open and awkward to close. That being said, this knife is one of those classically designed knives, so you're not really looking to open and close this thing a lot, right? You're looking to open it and use it a ton and then close it, right? So that's just something I don't like. I prefer the more modern stylings of being able to open with the thumb stud. That's where the Buck 110 takes over and has kind of a leg up, is, you know, you're able to put this thumb stud on and it's able to be open one-handed, and frankly, I prefer a knife that can be open one-handed. A lot of times when I need a knife, I have something in my other hand and I'm pulling this out to cut it, you know? So I just don't like kind of the overall deployment and you know, the deployment stylings of this knife. That's another thing I don't like. Another thing I don't love, tip's kind of thin. You know, it's not terribly thin, so I'm still going to say I don't love it because it's just a little bit too thin for my liking. Okay, guys, that's really it. That's the thing I really don't like about this knife. And it's kind of something that it's probably not going to make me want to hold on to this knife for very long, is that deployment style. It's just not something I can get into. Not being able to use a thumb stud with it, it's just kind of, it's a game changer for me. Now, what's unique about this knife? Cold Steel's offering, you know, a $35 knife with a very workable steel that's going to have solid lockup with an incredibly nice sheath. I mean, guys, this sheath is just so nice for 35 bucks. And they're giving you this classic style, again, that's going to be similar to the Buck 110. So that's what I think is unique, is they're going a classic route. Cold Steel does a lot of tactical stuff, right? A lot of survival stuff. Well, that's not this. This is not a tactical blade. This is a, standard pocket knife, kind of your working knife. It's a very, even though it's very large, it's large for a pocket knife, it's a very unintimidating knife. And so what's unique is that Cold Steel's offering something different, something kind of that they don't traditionally offer. And I think that that is cool. I just think that's very cool. Would I recommend it? Yes. If you can get over the deployment method. If you're okay with taking this thing out and opening it two-handed and closing it two-handed. Because that's really the safest and honestly really the only way you're going to be doing that. If you're okay with that, you say, I open my knife up whenever I've got a deer or whatever game. I use it to skin and do all that, or I open it up and I use it for food prep and I just close it and that's that. Great. I think this will be fantastic for you. It has a good enough steel. It's got nice design, very comfortable handle. So yes, with that caveat, I will recommend this, especially with that sheath. It's got an awesome sheath in it. So guys, let me know if you've ever used the Cold Steel Ranch Boss. What do you guys think of it? Because it's not a very popular knife. It's not one of their more popular offerings. So let me know if you have any experiences with this. Remember to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video. Peace.